Good afternoon and welcome back to the 7th Annual International HitLab Innovators Summit. We're so glad that you're here to join us today, and wherever you might be in the world, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Welcome to our daily Innovators Showcase. Each day we will have a panel of investors, and we will welcome 4 innovators and startups to the virtual stage to pitch to our panel of investors. Today, please join me in welcoming Gyan Kapur, co-managing partner at RTP Seed, RTP Ventures, joining us again from yesterday. And also joining us for the investor panel is Steve Barsh, managing partner at DreamIt Ventures, who is actually his partner was with us yesterday, and now we're very excited to have Steve with us now as well. So thank you very much for joining us. Each innovator will have 7 minutes to pitch to the panel and a total of 10 minutes to answer the panel's questions. I'd like to remind the audience that you can learn more about each of these innovators at their virtual exhibit booths available on the side of your screen throughout the entire conference. So I know that we have a lot to cover, and without further delay, I'd love to get started. I'd like to welcome our first innovator to the virtual stage, Zilla. Please welcome founder and CEO Patrick Sauvignon, who will tell us how Zilla is quantifying biomarkers in the eye for better clinical outcomes. Welcome, Patrick.
Hello, everyone. So let's get started. My name is Patrick Sauvignon, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Zilla, a medical device company focused on the assessment of biomarkers in the eye. At Zilla, we have developed a revolutionary platform technology for the measurement of biomarkers in the eye. Our technology is versatile and can be used in a variety of settings to facilitate earlier diagnosis, treatment, and management of a wide array of conditions and diseases. Since the eye is a unique window into someone's health, applications range from ophthalmology, neurology, cardiology, oncology to intensive care, and more. And among all potential applications, Zilla targets the eye care industry as its first market. That's because the global population is aging rapidly, and unfortunately, diseases, and ocular diseases in particular, are on the rise. It is estimated that by 2030, the prevalence of the 3 leading causes of blindness, glaucoma, diabetic retinopathy, and age-related macular degeneration will increase by 81%, 63%, and 89% respectively. And this means every year, more and more people worldwide have to face the biggest fear of all, losing their eyesight. So while the technological landscape in eye care keeps improving, one major issue remains. The vast majority of diagnoses are made rather late. And that's mostly because existing tools, such as retinal cameras and OCTs, focus on assessing damages already made to the eye. And as is the case for the majority of diseases, earlier diagnosis and treatment improves clinical outcomes by slowing down or even stopping the progression of the disease, thus limiting potential damages to the eye. And this is why Zilla is addressing a clear unmet clinical need. So let me show you how. It starts with the most important marker of metabolism, oxygen. In the last 5 years, over 125 scientific articles have established that oxygen saturation would be a crucial biomarker in many ocular diseases, including the 3 main causes of blindness. And this is why the first application of Zilla's platform technology is ocular oximetry, the measurement of oxygen saturation in the eye. So today I'm very proud to introduce to you Zilla Ocular. Zilla Ocular is the first retinal camera to also provide accurate measurements of oxygenation in the eye. And so to be clear, it provides both a live feed of the retina and continuous oximetry measurements. Assisted by artificial intelligence, this new technology offers a whole new set of metabolic information to researchers and eye care professionals. And applied in a clinical context, this technology could enable earlier diagnosis and better treatment, contributing to saving the sight of millions. So older generations of ocular oximeters laid the ground for the field, but their technology could not be applied in a clinical setting. Zilla brings forward a brand new technological platform with capacities and features that until now were not possible. It enables quantitative oximetry measurements where it matters most, in the tissues of the retina. And our high quality imaging capabilities also allow us to penetrate the retinal cameras market. So we have a clear de novo regulatory pathway. and a staged reimbursement strategy with established CPT code for imaging. We have an agreement with a CMO for the production of the hardware, and we will provide strong return on investment for clinicians. We launched Zilla Ocular in the research market this year and are in the process of applying for regulatory approval to open the clinical markets in 2022. The hybrid pricing model consists of a $30,000 capital expense in line with current standard retinal cameras, plus a monthly recurring fee of $500 per clinician. Compared with current standard retinal cameras, the Zilla Ocular will generate an additional 15% of gross profit to clinics. The global market for retinal cameras is expected to reach nearly 700 million per year by 2026. And Zilla aims to establish its first product, the Zilla Ocular, as the new standard in retinal imaging worldwide. That being said, the possibilities for oxygen supply analysis is not limited to eye care. It can also be used as a new tool to accelerate the development and delivery of new treatments, in neurology for the assessment of aneurysms, embolisms, and CVA, in neonatal, and for patient management of ER and ICU patients. Zilla is already working on the detection of other biomarkers in the retina. And this opens the door to non-invasive assessment of blood composition, neurological diseases, and other important conditions, all using the same hardware and platform. In our aim to bring Zilla's technology to the masses, we are also developing portable solutions, opening new applications and markets. I founded the company with my brother Dominic, combining our backgrounds in eye care for myself and engineering. And we've built a strong multidisciplinary team to bring our vision to reality. And we're also privileged to count world-renowned experts on our scientific advisory board. We're in the midst of closing a $3 million venture round that will move us past the regulatory approvals with a Series A scheduled for late 2022. We are thankful for the opportunity to be here today and are hoping to connect with potential collaborators and investors. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. I'd love to open it up now to some questions from the investor panel. Steve, Gyan, do you have any questions you'd like to ask?
Gyan, do you want to start and I'll come next?
Sure. Thanks for your time, Patrick. I guess I've seen a lot of these kind of businesses that, kind of like detect diabetic retinopathy or other diseases like that. And many of them have talked about kind of selling into the clinic, like you're kind of talking about. And I don't think they use oxygen saturation in the eye, but so that's a interesting scientific kind of point of differentiation. But I'm curious if you have any thoughts on why. My own perspective has been that most of them haven't really commercialized in a rapid way. So I'm curious why maybe you think that they haven't really successfully commercialized, and then simultaneously, maybe what makes you different. Is it this 15% ROI? Is that sufficient, or how do you think through that?
Right. So there's a lot of things there. First off, there's a lot of people that are putting forward retinal imaging analysis using AI to try to diagnose earlier. That being said, those are all companies that are using imaging outputs, trying to get a little earlier. We're really doing something else here by, for the first time, bringing ocular oximetry to the clinical market first, but also by combining retinal imaging capabilities. So yes, I think the ROI is part of the answer there, that we're kind of bringing a new generation of retinal cameras with enhanced capabilities to screen earlier and treat better. And so it's really a different perspective there. That being said, we control every aspect of the data lifecycle, from collection to labeling to analysis, and we're also capable of analyzing those images that we're collecting.
Yeah, and I guess maybe a quick follow-up question, and then I'll leave it to Steve, is like, I think you showed something like a 15% ROI, meaning like a 15% uplift in sales. How do you think about whether that's sufficient to differentiate you
Yeah.
from some of these other products?
What's
You know,
Yeah, what's important to know is that right now there are no other tools to measure metabolic or metabolism in the eye, although there's been a lot of different attempts. So the closest thing to our technology, closest thing to it is called OCTA, and it costs, it's way more expensive than what we're bringing to the market. So I think that it has been called for many years, trying to bring an ocular oximeter out there. And so we're coming in with a new perspective and an interesting return on investment on top of that.
cool. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, so ophthalmology isn't my strongest area, but let me give it a shot. And I know just enough, maybe not even be dangerous. But so one of the things, I always like to hear, and your pitch was really good and appreciate it. One of the things that's interesting is I always love to tie the front of a problem to the back, what you're doing. So you had said, the reason why I'm looking down at my notes, you had said the reason why these diseases occur is because people find out too late. It's just too late. And the question I have is, why is it too late? Meaning, if I have a disease like wet AMD, how early can you detect it? This is all about changing outcomes, right? If I don't see my eye doctor except once every 4 years, or I just happen to, my vision looks kind of funny, I'm already symptomatic and I go see the eye doctor, if I understand what the oxygen level within my eye is, my guess is, yeah, it's too late. Like, how does this change outcomes? How early do I have to catch something using your new technology, which seems really cool, that it's going to make a difference?
Yeah, so current modalities, as I mentioned earlier, kind of assess damages once it's really advanced.
Sure.
Once you have damages, and even there, you don't present any symptoms quite often, right? So what we're trying to achieve here is to unmask those diseases years earlier.
Sure.
And ocular oximetry has been proven to be an early predictor of the three main causes of blindness. So hopefully, what we intend to do is save sight, save eyesight by being able, in the context of a comprehensive eye exam, for instance, to pick up those problems years earlier and start treating then, right? So because we have the current treatment, the good treatment to do so, we need to pick those diseases earlier. That's
right.
What needs to be
but
done.
I guess for your target demographic, if you think about people that have like diabetic retinopathy or whatever eye disease they have that might be a comorbidity with diabetes, or it might not be a comorbidity. This is just me kind of going deeper into your deck, right? If I did the Venn diagram of your target market and that target demographic with how frequently they see the eye doctor,
Yeah.
do you have that data? Because my concern is, I see the eye doctor once every 10 years. My glasses are they don't see them frequently enough, and you're not going to be able to have an impact. And my guess is you have the data. I just want to hear it.
Yeah, so on average, one person gets an eye exam, like an average adult gets an eye exam every 2.5 years.
Okay.
So that being said, we're targeting more closely the elderly population that tends to go to their exams more regularly than that. Really often every year or yearly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're saying your sweet spot target demographic, they're seeing the eye doctor every year,
Yeah.
but the technology isn't there to pick it up. Okay, and maybe you said that as you went through this. I just didn't catch that. So that's interesting. Okay, target market we talked about, and then I guess one other quick question. You said the new source of revenue for ophthalmologists. That's because you have the CPT code that you feel you can bill against.
Yes.
Is that correct?
There is currently a CPT code for retinal imaging.
And they're billing against it today, correct?
Yes, correct.
Yep.
We will also work on a second CPT code to get a second CPT code for ocular oximetry, since obviously we're the first one providing that output. It doesn't exist at the moment. We'll be working on it over the next few years. In the meantime, there's always the possibility for a clinician to charge out-of-pocket expense or an out-of-pocket fee for the oximetry readout.
I'm so
Okay,
sorry.
I'm sorry, again.
Not to cut you guys off. This has gone already way over time, so we're
didn't know.
cutting you guys off now. 100% cutting you off. I'm so sorry. Thank you, Patrick. That was outstanding. We have to really move along to James Connolly next. We'd like to welcome James Connolly, founder of Vox Neuro, whose breakthrough brain assessment measures neuromarkers to reliably inform brain health management. Welcome, James. Thank you.
Thank you. Just confirm everyone can see my screen. Perfect.
Yep.
I see some head nodding. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is James Connolly. I'm a co-founder and CEO of Vox Neuro. As we all are here to talk about it, let's just call it what it is. The American healthcare system is the most disruptible industry in the world today. It accounts for 17% of the US GDP and boasts the worst customer service benchmarks globally. Vox Neuro's scientific breakthrough will help improve brain health in America. Today, 43% of brain diagnoses are incorrect, largely in part because doctors use flawed and outdated trial and error methods. Not because they want to, but because they have to. It's all they have to work with. Let's take a look at today's gold standard that was first established in 1913, which, to put into perspective, was 5 years before the Spanish flu. Following a suspected issue with brain function, a doctor conducts a subjective neuropsychological assessment that observes behavior and records a patient's symptoms and feelings. From there, the doctor infers a diagnosis on a patient's cognitive function. This creates what we call the cycle of subjectivity, a period of 3 to 12 months of trial and error treatment that is too expensive, too time-consuming, and delivers poor patient outcomes, even in best-case scenarios. The American Neurological Association estimates this subjective, century-old process costs the US $243 billion annually. Now let's take a look at what an ideal treatment path would look like. To enable more accurate diagnoses, doctors and patients need a tool that can objectively assess the function of the brain. In this ideal scenario, following a suspected issue with brain function, a doctor would conduct a rapid, objective assessment to measure biomarkers of the brain. The resulting actionable data could then be leveraged to develop tailored treatment plans that address the needs of each individual issue. Essentially, we're talking about precision medicine in brain health. Introducing Vox Neuro, the first ever real-time brain measurement tool that objectively measures biomarkers of the brain with 100% accuracy. Vox Neuro enables this ideal scenario and is doing so in Canada right now. Our proprietary EEG-based assessment is based on over 30 years of functional brain research, over 300 peer-reviewed scientific and clinical reports, and has received over $8 million in non-dilutive funding pre-incorporation. We use existing EEG hardware and couple that with our proprietary software and methodology to deliver a 45-minute assessment that is described by early adopters as a true stress test for the brain's core functions. We do not require a baseline due to our normative database. Now, in just 45 minutes, clinicians get better, more actionable data from Vox Neuro's assessment than they do over the 3 to 12-month trial and error treatment period today. This results in a waterfall of benefits to all stakeholders. Clinicians are able to identify true cognitive decline and tease out perceived decline. They're able to develop custom rehabilitation plans for the first time ever, accelerate and track treatment, improve predictability in patient outcomes, and from an organizational standpoint, streamline healthcare resources. We are growing into existing clinics and networks to minimize our capital investment and grow strategically into patient volume. Clinics are set up with hardware, EEG accreditation, clinical certification, and a communication support program for a $30,000 setup fee that has a 10% margin baked in for Vox Neuro. Reimbursement options available in Canada today include auto insurance, extended benefits, and workers' compensation. Our US strategy is still in development, including, in some cases, EEG CPT code strategy. We're also exploring value-based models. Each assessment costs $650, and our client clinics wrap a $1,000 to $1,200 treatment plan around each claim. Our business model is a recurring revenue model that sees Vox Neuro generate $325 in revenue per assessment that is paid by the clinic out of the $650. Next year, we're targeting 3,500 completed assessments and 1.1 million. Our overarching growth strategy, however, is to target 300,000 assessments completed and 100 million annually in revenue in the next 3 years. The market consists of 2 clusters, both of which leave areas for improvement today. The first cluster I'll highlight is one of objective diagnosis. These are tools that provide a binary yes-no diagnosis. They do not inform treatment. The second cluster is in fact focusing on treatment. However, they are leveraging subjective data. And this is what really sets Vox Neuro apart, because we are delivering objective, actionable data to inform rehabilitation. We're the only one on this slide that's addressing the $243 billion problem I mentioned earlier. In America alone, there are about 181 million people concerned about their brain function right now. You see the breakdown on the screen. I'll highlight the fact that COVID-19 is obviously an emerging market, but I will highlight also that we're already running assessments on COVID-19 patients here in Canada and in talks with numerous groups in the US currently. Vox Neuro is the platinum sponsor of Brain Injury Canada, the country's premier brain charity. We're weeks away from our Class 2 medical device clearance in the Canadian market, and we're preparing to submit our 510K to the FDA next month. We launched our first 2 Canadian client clinics during COVID lockdowns this year and have our lead US client secured in New York State. Last month, we announced partnerships with the globally recognized Toronto Rehab Institute, which is part of UHN, and the Canadian Football League Alumni Association. We have the right team to hit our short and medium-term goals, and we continue to actively hire. This month, we're onboarding our Chief Revenue Officer, who I found out yesterday actually secured his first $20 million deal in healthcare when I was still in high school. So we're excited about where we are today, and we're more excited about where we're going in the future. And there are a number of ways you could get involved with Vox Neuro's mission. We're opening a $10 million Series A next year that will focus on US expansion. We're actively seeking partners in various sectors, and we're always looking for expertise to address both our known and unknown unknowns as we continue to grow. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm very happy to answer any questions you may have.
Steve, I can go first if you want, whatever.
Go ahead, fire away.
Cool. So in particular, it sounds like you're focused on TBI initially. Is that fair? Or what kind of specific indications are you focusing on?
Yeah, it's a great question. The meat of our existing data is focused on TBI and concussion. We have done quite a bit of work in actually the aging population as well. So really our main focus out of the gate is concussion, TBI, and general cognitive health, addressing the decline of the aging population.
Got it. I'm sure you've read this, but like Google had all this work on, they're trying to understand depression through the same mechanisms. And basically their kind of conclusion was we can't do it. So I'm curious how much of this, how much of kind of these pathways are well understood for non-TBI diseases. So for instance, for general aging mechanisms or Alzheimer's or something like that, is it clear that you'll be able to extend out into those and kind of use the same fundamental technology, or is it kind of like, well, it's a research project the same way Google was trying to figure this out for depression and realized they couldn't even do it using EEG?
Right, it's a great question. We're actually in talks with 2 pharmaceutical groups right now regarding longitudinal studies of the aging population to focus on Alzheimer's. So I think where we see our opportunity to provide value to this ecosystem as a whole would be to explore early biomarkers. In many cases, our neuroscience team will always say, if there's something about the brain that you want to know, Vox Neuro can find it. It's simply a matter of time and data. And that's essentially been our model. So we do see ourselves, and we are a platform technology for the brain. And it's essentially about our normative database. That is, our crown jewel, essentially, that allows us to make these determinations against different applications. So we do have within our development pipeline to grow into incremental areas. I think in many ways, actually, we've talked with groups who have attempted to do this in the past. And I think that is in many ways the brilliance of our Chief Science Officer.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Gyan.
Thanks for your presentation. It was really interesting. Couple quick questions. I mean, it was interesting. The same question I had. What's the diagnosis area you're going after? You said traumatic brain injury. So in that, how do you? It's the same question like for the previous presenter. It's always the question we have for health tech companies. How do you change outcomes? You talked about like the inaccuracy of measurement, but if we think about just concussion, right? And I've been in many doctors' offices with kids that are dealing with concussions. What's different? What changes because you're there?
Yeah, so it's really all about trial and error and taking that out. So let me actually give you an anecdotal example of that will answer this question, Steve. In 2018, we conducted a pilot with Bayshore Healthcare here in Canada. They gave us 27 patients that, through their existing gold standard, essentially estimated these patients would be a 7 to 8 month recovery timeline. They went through the Vox Neuro pilot, and the last member of that 27 group was back at work in the 7th week of the pilot. We are quite literally turning the light on in an area of healthcare that is completely dark. These clinicians are the best people in the world to do what they do, but if you ask them directly, they'll tell you they're guessing. And we're taking that guesswork out of this by providing them a roadmap to address the specific core brain functions that are actually impacted, whether that be executive function and visual processing, or looking at something like working memory and concentration. We can quantify these and really give the clinician the tools they need to develop a plan to fit the need of those injuries.
Okay, I'd love to know more, but we don't have time because that brings up some other questions. The other thing is, so you just got your class 2 device clearance in Canada, is that correct?
So we've been cleared as a lab developed service since 2018, and we've been operational as such. However, we expect before the holidays, actually, I'll knock on some wood, to get that class 2 certification back. And that's a combination of our SaaS platform that we developed in partnership with the National Research Council of Canada and our ISO 13485 certification that we secured in September of this year.
So my quick question, if I have a minute left, is, this is just more of a business model question. Why do you even charge $30,000 up front? To me, this is like a vending machine. You want to put it in and it just keeps giving, right? It seems like, is that an obstacle to sale? Like you just, again?
Yeah, so initially, the first 2 actually were at a higher price point. We've actually innovated this year. We've cut our entry fee in half. So it's actually 50% more efficient than it was before. However, you are absolutely right. And the future of Vox Neuro would see this installation as a loss leader to get us into that clinic. You're absolutely right. I think it's really just a matter of where we are as an early stage company.
Okay, it's fine. I'm assuming I'm out of time. So
thank you very much, Steve. Thank you, Gyan. And thank you very much, Justin.
It's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. And again, I encourage you to connect with the innovators that you'd like to learn more about, Steve and Gyan. I also would like to remind everybody at the audience that just below your screen, you'll see an Audience Choice Award button, and that will be how you'll be voting on your favorite innovator from today's presentation, and we'll be announcing that at the conclusion. At this time, thank you, James. We'll be turning off your camera, and we'd like to welcome our next innovator. Up next, we'd like to welcome Richard Hanbury. Welcome, Richard, whose personal experience with car accident-induced nerve pain led him to develop a wearable that will help all patients who suffer from chronic pain. Please welcome Sana Health.
Hi. Sorry, let me just try and get my camera back. Brilliant. There we go. Thank you. Pleasure to see you again, Steve. Steve is one of my most loyal and helpful investors. So but you haven't seen this current pitch.
No.
So I had a road traffic accident in the Yemen, 1992. I was forced to drive a Jeep off a bridge, and spinal cord injury, T8, T10, aortic tear, and traumatic brain injury. So have experience on these areas. I made a device to fix my own pain problem, and this is the current version of the device. It uses audio-visual neuromodulation to create specific frequency patterns to solve pain. And specifically, we're solving the central mediation of pain, not peripheral pain signals. So within the pain market, we can go after anything that is, all pain is a combination of central mediation and peripheral pain. We're going after the central mediation part. Within that, fibromyalgia is our first target market because it is the largest single unmet need with the most poor current solutions available. $10,000 per person per year is the direct medical cost of fibromyalgia currently. Current standard of care is a basket of cocktail of 5 to 8 drugs, of which Lyrica is the most common, Cybulta the second most common, and those together provide a very poor improvement in quality of life. So again, here's the device. The user puts it on, turns it on, adjust the brightness and volume, and what they're experiencing is a pulse of light coming into their eyes and a pulse of sound, with those 4 inputs being cycled through with particular algorithms to get us to specific states. Now, the underlying reason why we could do things with audiovisual that hasn't been able to be achieved in any other type of neuromodulation is addressing this issue that's been termed hemispheric balance. This comes out of originally research into long-term effects of meditation and EEG processes that were done across a basket of 6 different cognitive functions. And the results of that showed that long-term meditators had, on this particular standardized test, this hemispheric function issue. I took that original search. I measured my own brain on the same gear and the same protocol, discovered that I had this very large disparity left to right hemisphere. That turns out to be there in almost everyone else with long-term chronic pain or chronic anxiety. And with audiovisual neuromodulation, we can address that problem. We've done 4 clinical trials. We finished 4 clinical trials to date. The most important of those for the path forward is fibromyalgia. We're knocking in around 5x the efficacy of Lyrica. Lyrica sold $4.8 billion in 2018, and roughly half of that was for fibromyalgia. So 5x the efficacy with 0 side effects. Lyrica, by contrast, has some side effects that are so bad that 80% of people stop taking it. We've got similar levels of effect size on anxiety and depression within fibromyalgia. We've got effect size lasting more than a year at this point in time, with people using once a day as a sort of maintenance dose on fibromyalgia. So we're looking at a subscription service. We're starting at $50 a month. We are in discussion with Anthem and Harvard Pilgrim around the $100 a month price point, including EHR integration and integrating it into the standard of care. But rough numbers, 50% subscription per month, COGS at scale 75. If we get 2% of the people with fibromyalgia, that is 100 million ARR. That starts with, so I'll come back to that. So this is our overall pipeline at the moment. We've completed the opioid addiction study and the fibromyalgia study, and we've just completed another EEG study as well. Our 510K, sorry, our de novo is with Duke. We are now halfway through the 120-person RCT, which is our pivotal study. That should be submitted to the FDA in February or March. Our second 120-person RCT, which has already started, is in neuropathic pain at Mount Sinai. And we have a large pipeline of other studies, either already going on in the case of NATO and fatigue management. We've got studies going on in the US, Canada, UK, Hungary, and about to start Portugal and France. And various other studies that we've got grant applications in for, or that are being partner funded. Anthem is currently discussing with us about funding a study in lower back pain. So fundraising so far, we've raised 11 million in previous rounds. And again, thank you to DreamIt for coming into 2 of those. We are now raising a 5 million equity round, and that is now being done on a rolling close. We've closed over half of it. We've got approximately another million on top, soft confirmed, so we've got 1 million open. That round will get us through FDA, fibromyalgia, and almost certainly neuropathic pain as well. It'll also give us a commercial study to prove willingness to pay out of pocket whilst we're going through the reimbursement process. We're expecting the reimbursement process on the private side to be complete in October, November. We are also going for breakthrough status, which would give us a CMS temporary coding in tandem with our de novo. And then the last milestone for this round is engineering to lower COGS. So I'm going to leave the extra time for questions because you guys have done such high quality questions so far. So over to you.
Steve, maybe you want to start with this one?
I've talked to him, but let me go last. I'll let you go and give you more time because I only have 1 or 2 because I know the story pretty well.
Okay. So I guess one question would be how much kind of fiddling does this require up front? Meaning, you mentioned that in kind of your presentation that I guess it's either the patient or clinician kind of modifies the treatment regimen in terms of kind of the waves that are sent. So how does that happen? How much of that happens up front, et cetera?
It's literally about 10 seconds because
Just lost your audio.
Yeah, we lost you for like.
Lost your audio, Richard, for a second.
Am I back now?
Yep.
Sorry.
Cool. Sorry. Yeah. So the FDA required us to not change the protocol at all for individuals. So the only change being made is on brightness and volume. So literally they put it on and it's changing the brightness and volume to what feels comfortable at the time. So it's about a 10-second process, that's it. Because the brightness that will be comfortable middle of the day is much brighter than would be comfortable if someone was waking up at 3 in the morning and then trying to put themselves back to sleep when they're in pain. So that bit's really simple. In the next version of the device, we'll be instituting a closed loop feedback system as well, which we had our second patent issued for in October. And that one will be released as under the 513G label, which will allow us to release it onto the medical device, get real world data, and then put that in as a supplemental additional application to the FDA. So we will have the medical device version, and then future iterations of improving that feedback loop will be first released as a wellness, under a wellness label, but on the same medical device. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't know a lot about medical device, so like you lost me at 513G, but everything.
That means wellness. That means the FDA said we are safe. We are a low risk device.
Got it. I guess another question would be, you're comparing yourself to Lyrica, which is kind of, I'm assuming, is it a pill or is it a injection?
So Lyrica is a pill.
Okay, so Lyrica is a pill. Have you done any comparisons against like maybe something that's less like you just take it and it's easy like a pill in some ways, although there are side effects, and something like CBT or some of these other methods that people often use for some of these like idiopathic conditions? Like does CBT have an effect here? What are you kind of compared to when it's people aren't comparing you to drugs? Does meditation have an effect here? Has anybody done clinical trials around any of that stuff?
So CBT is a growing area, but let me come back to that 1 second. So in terms of real life of what people are actually doing with fibromyalgia, it's rough. In 2012, the biggest study ever done was $450 a month out of pocket. Half of that was copay on drugs. Half of that was things like massage and acupuncture. Obviously, the massage and acupuncture no one can do currently, but post-COVID, our direct dollar, when someone's making a choice between $1 on us or $1 on something else, it will be massage and acupuncture in the first instance. CBT is around, but CBT has two very large problems, of which only one is being solved by VR. That is access, which VR is big, and this is not including Karuna, who is also a DreamIt customer, who are the only really smart VR I would call in the therapeutic space. There's a bunch of other stuff that is distraction, which is of no real value in this kind of area, and then there's the people who do CBT like applied VR. And the problem with CBT is that one, access, which hopefully they're solving, and two is people's willingness and energy and motivation to do it. CBT for insomnia has been around for 20 years. It's got less than a 0.1% market penetration after 20 years, and every clinical trial showing it works. The problem is every clinical trial self-selects for people who are willing to do CBT in the first place. So ideally, we will end up being the first line of treatment, so you get people into a better state, and then you do things like CBT afterwards, when you've got someone out of the worst part of their problem and they actually have the energy and time and motivation to then go on to the next level to embed those benefits. So ultimately, we're not a competitor. Ultimately, we should end up being a collaborator, but we should be the first port of call.
Got it. Steve,
Can I ask
just a quick-
one 30-second question? Not even. Richard, for your fibromyalgia study, what's the N size? What's the patient size? I didn't see that on your data.
So the one we completed was 20.
20,
We actually
okay.
hit our primary and all our secondaries on each sub-cohort of 10.
Okay.
The Duke study is 120 because the FDA said we don't care what your N is as long as it's 120 or more. And
Okay.
so statistically 10 was enough. 120, we had to get, as you can do the math, less than 20% of the effect size to still nail the p-value.
Great. Thank you.
Richard was actually very efficient with his time, so we do have time for one more question if you'd like.
Steve, you can give it a go, I guess.
Sure. One more time. So what's your FDA path right now? It's 510K, right? It's not de novo.
No,
And then what do you?
So on the Duke study will be a de novo. Every
Okay.
other indication in pain will be a self-predicated 510K.
Got it.
Likewise, we had to do one de novo in the mental health bucket. So, and that'll almost certainly be depression. And then everything else within the mental health bucket will be a self-predicated 510K.
So for the fibromyalgia indication, that's going to be a self-predicated 510K?
No, fibromyalgia is the first one, so it'll be a de novo.
It'll be de novo.
The
Okay.
neuropathic pain will be a self-predicated 510K because it'll be the second one.
Got it. Got it. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Richard. It was a pleasure having you here today. And again, Richard Hanbury, no stranger to HitLab. Pleasure to have you back. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for your time.
I would like to welcome Rama Rao, the founder and CEO of Bloqcube, the blockchain technology-enabled solution which will revolutionize healthcare as we know it. Please welcome Rama Rao.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Happy Thursday. Can you see my screen?
No, I just see just you. Perfect.
Okay. Hang on a minute. Let me get that sorted out. And now?
Yep.
Perfect. Happy Thursday. Following in the impressive footsteps of my peers, we are slightly different. We're a clinical trial software company, and our goal really is to accelerate clinical trials. For this audience, I won't go over the steps that the clinical trial systems today are suboptimal. You've seen a lot of data already about it. But instead of boiling the ocean, what we decided to focus on was on a very specific sub-segment of the entire process. And that is where the visits and trials take place in a site. And what we looked at this data, we found that patient-driven costs are about 4% of the total costs of a clinical trial. And if you look at the site-related costs, that's about 26%. And this is in an industry that spends $100 billion every year. The other challenge is that most people in a Viva study done approximately 2 years back are relatively dissatisfied with the current systems also. So our focus has been on trying to figure out and fix the pain points in the site-related aspects of a clinical trial. The 5 pain points that we are targeting is that there is delayed access to data. There are siloed systems in clinical trials. There's data fidelity and fraud issues that have been discovered. They also have been issues because of multiple intermediaries and delayed payments. For example, a white paper by the Society of Clinical Research Sites in the US indicated that the average was patients and physicians were being paid in 4 months, whereas they preferred, of course, to get paid within a month. And Bloqcube basically addresses these pain points. Our value proposition is that we are an integrated clinical trial management financial system. We are leveraging cloud-based distributed ledger and electronic data capture technologies of an iPad to accelerate trials, deliver real-time immutable data transparently, and provide remote clinical trials management tools. And obviously, our focus in terms of customers are basically pharma, biotech companies, and contract research organizations, or anybody doing a clinical trial. The way we do it to cut costs and increase speed and transparency is firstly, we have a remote monitoring solution that takes our trial systems into a patient's home. The second part of it is that it's a decentralized system, and we have integrated multiple quote unquote systems to form one capability. In addition, we've got a distributed ledger engine, which also allows us to deliver end-to-end transparency. And then we give a real-time view of patient activity as well as financial activity all through the process. And given the dissatisfaction rate, we felt strongly that this would represent a significant move forward. Now, we did field testing in 2 places. This was a beta test firstly done in a diabetes study at a clinical trial site in India. And our system went into 150 patients' homes. Their actual protocol called for 850 patients to be done in 12 months, and we did it in 12 days. And even if we look at, an apples to apples comparison, we should have cut cut speed by about 50%. The second field test was at a community health screening camp, and that's where we covered 65 patients in 6 hours. And we also got a virtual certification done through HIT Labs in order to be sure that our system can be applicable in multiple scenarios. Now, let me take you one layer below on what happened in this field trial. The left-hand side is the one which is a diabetes study. And uniquely, we created geotagging of all the points where the trial was taking place. So the physician who was supervising the trial 20 miles away was keeping track of exactly which were the patients, where they were located. Now, this comes in very handy, both from a data integrity perspective. If you're doing a large trial and you're doing it multinational, so you're sitting, let's say, in Boston, and you want to know what's happening in Kapur, Russia, or Mombasa, Kenya. And that was the point that the WHO indicated to us they would be interested in if you want to take our system forward. In addition, we began giving widgets to give the diversity profile, which the FDA, of course, recently has flagged. The adverse event cases, which is a critical part. And uniquely, we created for informed consent, which is the 3rd largest generator of audit objections from the FDA during audits, audio recording also to do the informed consent. And if you look at the right-hand dashboard, that was also being captured on an hourly basis because of our structure of the engine. We are biased. We believe our system has got a lot of features that the other competitors have. But in addition, we have unique capabilities that takes us forward further than what others do. And as you have seen more recently, even COVID trials are being attacked by ransomware kind of challenges. We believe our blockchain engine system or distributed ledger engine system is a lot more resistant to and less vulnerable to such attacks. Moving forward as an entrepreneur, we've really been balancing risks. We first try to capture and figure out the product risk because this was new technology at the bleeding edge. We then have been going into the market risk aspects to see people really want this mousetrap, in the sense that we didn't want to just create a product and say that people will just run to us because of it, but we were basically testing it out with various people. And now we're in the stage of basically acquiring customers from a business development perspective. My background and professional passion comes from Novartis and Lilly. I used to be the global clinical development finance head for Novartis Oncology. But even more than this passion is the fact that a loved one is a patient of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and has gone through 3 cycles of chemotherapy. And I've always wondered, what would we do if we don't have a drug? And why does drug development take so much time? Having been part of the strategic, operational, and tactical decisions, I have a much better picture about it. There's a quick plug for HIT Labs. And Steve, what I'd like to do is to take this to August 2018, when you presented to budding entrepreneurs like me a slide about Henry Ford. And the fundamental piece is that we didn't want to make something that would be an evolutionary change on existing computer trial systems, but something would be hopefully a revolutionary change by linking various pieces of the puzzle together. And with that, what I'd like to do is to open it up for questions, because I think your questions would educate me also simultaneously.
Cool.
Steve, maybe
So
I'll
in
let you
terms
go.
of, I forgot, there's one slide in terms of the ask, which I rushed through. We're looking at a seed round of $4 million, right? $4 to $5 million right now. And we are basically, from a traction perspective, had already raised $1 million through crowdfunding. And we were doing this in a very structured way in terms of measured amounts of 200 to 400,000 while we built our product up. Now for commercial acquisition, we have also triggered off a 1 million equity financing round to give us a bridge. And we're really looking for strategic investors who will anchor our growth. And finally, we're also looking for customers in this audience who can help us pilot our system even more in the US, etc. And of course, partners who are in the area of software sales to help us increase our reach. Let me turn it off there. Thanks.
Steve, maybe I'll let you go first this time.
Sure, no problem. I'll go first. So thanks for your presentation. It was interesting. So I have kind of a fundamental question. It was one of the slides you brought up, and you're welcome if you want to go back to it. You had said patient-driven costs are 4%, site-related costs are 26%. Could you break that down? I don't know, because then I want to get into, then you talk about pain points, and I want to kind of flip those out. What are patient-driven costs being 4% and site-related? Like when you say site-related, is that the PI? Is that, you know, what do you mean by, what are those?
So it relates to, firstly, site monitoring costs. So you have all the site monitors coming in from, let's say, the pharma companies or wherever, who is doing the trial. It also includes the source data verification, you know, where people are really checking and rechecking and rechecking, plus inputting multiple systems. Third is payment processes have their own financial transaction inefficiencies. You know, the fourth thing is basically the general admin associated with it. You know, sites have a lot of fixed costs. So if you're going and doing a trial, let's say at Sloan Kettering versus doing it at a patient's home, there's a total difference in terms of fixed costs across over there. What happens actually is that because there are multiple systems, sometime later during the process, a person will remember and say, hey, this doesn't make sense. So there's a query process. Emails go out, emails get responded to, people check. And sometimes people have to go back and once again check that. And this data comes from an Eastern Research Consulting group that did the study for HHS. And they've broken it up by phase and by sequence into even more categories.
Okay. So what I was trying to get at, and the question behind my question, right, was I'm trying to understand, like, if site-related costs are a quarter of things, and it's 26%, I would have assumed, you know, I don't know if you're selling to a CRO or if you're selling to the hospital themselves, a large portion of that is staffing and HR. It makes up, I would assume, I could be wrong, 80% of the 26% is people, I would assume. So then I was just trying to wrap my mind around what you're talking about. And I don't know if this helps to talk about, but then on your next slide, you start talking about the pain points, like delayed access to data, siloed systems. I was trying to understand, like, are you taking apart, these are the site-related costs, hence these are the pain points that if we solve them, we can get 26% down to 1%? To, like, I'm trying to understand it, because the last thing is, you know, what problem do you solve, and is it a big enough impact that your target customer is going to care? That's kind of what my base question is.
Got it.
Yep.
So let's just pass through that. So you are right when you say that the big chunk is admin costs. Having said that, what you don't see is not the hospital cost, which is conducting the site, but also the site, like say the pharma company sending out a monitor to check things out. That's site monitoring. The staff costs and other admin costs, that relates to exactly in the site.
Right.
The second thing is that I would say they're 80% because from the data that's been there, it is spread out. But the source data verification and trial monitoring is a big chunk of it over there. So that's one part. Now let's go down to the point that you're saying the linkage between this and this. The answer is yes, that if we start fixing this multiple intermediaries that is coming over here and having a through system, we would also be taking down the issues regarding the data fidelity fraud and delayed access piece. In addition, the siloed systems are the reason why you also have some of these site monitoring pieces. So we should be able to cut that out and disrupt some of those processes as we go along. And the answer to your question is, if you look at what Medable and System 37 are doing, they're doing something like this, but they're using a smartphone as part of the process. And as you know, they raised about $91 million last month. So we are following in. They're quite ahead of us, but that's the kind of model that we are trying to follow as we go along.
Okay, let me ask one follow-on question, and I'll hand it over to our other investor. So let's say I implement your system and everything goes swimmingly well, and I'm just going to put blockchain to the side because I almost don't care. It's great. It's an immutable ledger. My 26% of site, it goes to 26% of site-related costs goes down to what? What do you save me if I implement what you're doing?
So my sense is, and this is where the beta test kind of showed us, the beta test had basically taken out up to 50%. We're not trying to suggest that 50% is really valid over here, but we think at least it will be in the 20 to 30% range at least as we project this out. And I'm looking at it based on also my personal experience, where I know how much headcounts are used for reconciliation and structural process like that.
Okay, thanks.
At the same time, to be honest, Steve, I don't want to make a kind of like a categorical thing like that until we've got data to back it up. So our data is still in the early stages of our structure. But this is my experience that brings it together.
Excellent.